Lord.
Very good. Thank you. I got it. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Nice crowd. And before we start, we don't have a sponsor for today, but we have a special day for Abigail Liebertron, Aviva Schwartz, Beverly Berger. Wow, she celebrated her 39th birthday again. Okay, and Shoshi Kane, my best friend. Where is she? Shoshi, you're not here? Okay. We wish you all, and also on Shabbos is Yechiel Levine. We wish you all a happy birthday. May Hashem bless you all with continued good health and success and nachas to your parents, to Rabbi Shalom. Your parents have nachas from you, and you should have nachas from your parents. Oh, happy birthday! Should I sing happy birthday to you, Soshi? Is it your birthday today? Where is she? Okay, we'll get her at the end. Not sure what happened there. Okay, I'm going to mute everyone, so forgive me. Happy birthday, Soshi. How old are you? You bas mitzvah? She's muted. Okay. We'll catch you later. Okay.
7.5 really.
7 years old. Wow, act like you're at least 10. You should be happy and healthy and give your parents a lot of nachas and put you a nice birthday present. Okay. Okay, we're going to mute everyone, and now we're going to start. Okay, so today we start the week of Haid. We're marching onward. We only have 3 weeks left. Haid is the Malchus. And this is a big week. Haid, Shabbat Haid is Lag Baimer. But we start off the week with Haid. And, you know, just a little bit of a review. We talk about the different midas, and, you know, there's different ways of looking at it from Hashem's angle, his midas, and our midas. I've been focusing mostly on our midas. And, you know, I was thinking, you know, in life, each of the midas we implement at different times. And I want to introduce review the midas by using my own personal life. You know, I was a principal for many years. I was Rosh Hashiva for a few years. Rav, but you know, in a principal, so I in my years, and I was a teacher for many years, you know, how many years already? Approaching 40 years in chinuch, and you know, you go through the different midas, and you know, sometimes, you know, the chesed principle, you know, that's the first midah, chagat nehim, chesed, you know, you just can't. Usually works for about 2 weeks, but then the kids trample all over you because if you just chesed, you won't succeed. So then you start to implement the next. You know, you got to be strong, implement the rules. That works for about 3 weeks. So then what you have to do is learn how to do both chesed and gevura. You know, they have to be the good guy, and you got to be the bad cop and the good cop. And then if you merge in somehow and you know how to balance discipline with kindness, and you get to Ferris, and that works for a while. But then, you know, sometimes you need to come up with other tools. And as you mature, you know, the next one after Chesed, Gvura, and Teferes, which is using both at the same time, then you get Netzach. So, you know, principles, you try to explain, you know, the values for what they are. And you try to convey, you know, the emes for what it is. Netzach is the emes for what it is. And that works sometimes, but it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. And because, you know, not every kid is thoughtful and thinking, and you need to use other emotions besides, you know, the MS and the Netzach, and just endure with the truth and the principles with a PLES, not PAL. But, and then we're starting this week, and then sometimes there's Haid. What's Haid? I'd like to explain what I think Haid is. There are many elements to Haid. I think Haid, and again, the example, the different midas, again, so you can remember this, we'll come back to this many years to come, is obviously the first chesed is Avram, Gvur is Yitzchak, Teferes is Yaakov, merged them both. And then you have Netzach is Moshe. And now we have Haid, is Aaron. We go with that system. Avram is Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. Yosef is Yisrael, and David is Malchus. So Aaron is Haid. What is Haid? Haid is, you know, there are certain people you come across in life, especially when you're in school and you have principals and, you know, other venues, you have people of authority and the like. There's some people who are the Gvura people, there's the Chesed people, there's the Tiferes people, there's the Netzach people, Mr. Bright and all that. But then there's the people who are they just radiate a certain warmth. There's a certain undefined hide, like Maneda HaKayin, when he goes out, the sort of hide v'hadar, the hide v'hadar of Aaron HaKayin, the Kayin Gadol. There's something that's not tangible. There's something about a certain inner calm that comes across, that's embracing, that's compelling, that draws one in, and that's hide. And the reason that Aaron HaKayin had it, because the side of hide is contemplative mindfulness, contemplative thinking. Very often, so often in life in general, we're very reactive to external stimuli. We seek to satisfy ourselves with this external stimuli rather than deeper meaning. And then that's the nature of human, because of our nefesh abahamis, if we'll call it that, our animalistic side. We're just reactive to the physical layers that we respond. And very often we judge things based on without really thinking it through, just seeing the externals. And we think we know better and we react. But someone who has hide, and Aaron HaKayin did it throughout his life. I'll give you a few examples. Every circumstance that he came across, he thought about it quietly. He thought it through. He didn't just react. He was able to absorb and be willing to understand what was going on, contemplate, move himself and his reactions, and take it all in and see what was going on. So, of course, the first example is Varach of Asama Balibai. Here he was, the older brother, but when Kodesh said, Moshe will be the leader, he immediately thought it through calmly. There's no overwhelming reaction. It says he saw him, Asama Balibai. It even emphasized it was a quiet symbol. It wasn't, whoa, he wasn't waving his hands and jumping. It was Asama Balibai. It's a quiet, contemplative thoughtfulness that he thought of when he says, yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu is certainly the right candidate. And later on, he embraced him, he kissed him, but it was a quiet contemplation. And then, of course, by the Egel, Aaron attempts. He wasn't successful. Chor lost his life, but Aaron tries to, understand them, and he talks to them. Says Chagach Shem Machar, and he tries and he makes some accommodations that didn't work. It went awry, but at least he made an attempt, and because he thought it through, he was trying to relate to what's going on rather than simply the reaction of like Moshe reacted. He had a different reaction. And of course, when it came to the death of his children, of Naviu, it wasn't just an overwhelming immediate grief, which is the natural, superficial, external reaction to such a tragedy. But Aaron, he thinks it through. And then again, even afterwards, when he burns the Sirachatos, he doesn't need it. And even though there's an Einan, and Moshe Rabbeinu is all upset, and Moshe's principle says, I told you, I gave you some rules, and why didn't you follow them? But Aaron quietly, he presents his case, Hayita Be'eni Hashem, and he says, makes a chiluk between the Sirchatus, the Tyrus, whatever it is, whatever the reason. We're not getting into the reasons, but he has contemplated, and that Maneda HaKaya, how beautiful, how hide v'hada, how much radiance that's captivating. And many of us, I see Rabbi Wecker here, who and many others, but we've often spoken about his years by Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein was a man who had that midah of hide. You just, when you were in his dalamis and you spoke to him, you had an issue. It wasn't as if, he was, he had, the fire and brimstone coming out, or, necessarily the brilliance, which was certainly, but you got the impression you were dealing with someone very contemplative, who heard everything he's saying, who's absorbing it, and he's processing it, and he's thinking it through. That's why Aaron HaKayin was the Ayavas Habrius from the Karvan L'Torah. And why was he so successful in bridging? Because when you have that hide, when you have that quiet contemplativeness, that thoughtfulness, you think it through, and you act that way, that's how you, it's not a ploy, it's the MS. And it's just you validate people, and then people are willing to accept from you, and you can accomplish a lot. And that's the chesed hide, because Aaron HaKayin had that, because he had that hide. He was able to be accepted by and the people who are very brilliant, and they're very compelling, and sometimes we're drawn to them. But the ones we're drawn to often the most is those who have that intangible radiance that comes out, because you really get a sense that they understand what's going on and what they get. And as I mature as a principal, I tried. Believe me, there were many gvura moments, a lot of chesed moments, but certainly moments in between. But when I got older, and I realized that, I can remember different episodes with yearbooks that I suddenly discovered it. I remember one particular episode, I threw the book. I'll be honest, I was upset, and they slipped in it. I was really upset. But later on, I learned to it wasn't just about self-control. That's part of it. But it's about really taking it in, understanding the people, contemplate what's going on, information, remove yourself and your external, and listen and try to process what's going on. And you'll get much further. Number one, you'll be much calmer. And the more internal we are, the more confident we are, the less external we are, the more happy we are, the less we need external stimuli. I wrote an article I was going to speak tonight, but you'll read it. I wrote, again, I don't like to boast, but I wrote something that was very meaningful to me in this week's bulletin. Hopefully you'll read it. And this idea, it does relate to a little deeper level, but touches on this idea of the quiet contemplation that really can get you places, not only in the chesed shabahayid, but even in appreciating yourself and learning to live in your own skin. And you'll read about it and hopefully you find it. So one of the people I came across in life, and that's another man on the screen, that's Reb Shai Stiga. We share a Rabbi. It was his Rabbi for more years than mine, but Reb Chaim Leib Epstein was a prince of a human being. I knew his father too. I had a chance to actually get to know him quite well. He was also mamish. There are certain people, when you see them, you say, this is what the Eibishter had in mind. You say, you look, this is what God had in mind. They just have that height. They just have it. They have everything else. And Reb Chaim Epstein was like that. He wasn't, I had different Rosh Hashivas. I had Reb Mother Weinberg and I had Reb Shmuel Miller, different personalities. But Reb Chaim was just a person that, he wasn't just brilliant. And even though the story I'm going to tell you is presented as evidence of his brilliance, I argue with the writer of the story in his interpretation that it was Reb Chaim Leib Epstein's brilliance. I think it was his midah of Haid. And that's really, and I'm going to read you the story and share the story. And just as an example, and we can all learn from this to learn how to implement this Haid, this midah of quiet, contemplative, and honest contemplation and mindfulness to really translate that into a Haid that really can make a difference. So the story goes like this. It says there was one Shabbos, Reb Chaim Epstein, he's no longer living. He met the Menal of a Maisid who was greatly distressed over something that had happened in his yeshiva. The yeshiva had a big sukkah campaign, and prizes were given to the class, and boy, who brought in the most money. Okay. One boy brought in a check from his parents for a significant amount of money, ensuring that the boy and his class would win the contest. And indeed, they were promised the trip and the prize money for bringing in the largest amount of money. Right before Cheder ended on Friday, this is what he's telling Reb Chaim. He says that Anhola realized that the boy had taken the check from his parents' checkbook on his own. Anhola was up in arms. You can imagine. It was a gvura moment, as this was a major crime that affected the entire class in the whole school. The boy had stolen from his parents, had cheated the school, and had created a major problem. The Manal was extremely agitated about it and was at a loss. How was he to deal appropriately with such a major offense? It's hard to find the chesed in these moments. Did such a terrible thing. Chesed's misplaced. It's such guilt, such a terrible crime. So Rav Epstein asked the Manal quietly. He didn't react. And again, it wasn't brilliance. I think because he understood, let's hear what's going on in this child. Who is this child? Where does it come from? And what about a child? Let's think it through. And he says he turned to the Manal who had he asked the Manal, how old was the kid who did? He says about 9 years old, the Manal said. So it happened to be that the Manal also had a son who was in the same class and the same age. So Rav Epstein called him over and he says, and he asked him, did you ever see your parents write a check? And he says, the boy, yeah, sure, many times. He says, what happens when you write a check? Asked Rav Chaim Epstein. He said, then you can use it, the boy responded. Where do they get checks from? He asked the boy, 9-year-old boy. He said, what do you mean? They have a checkbook with checks. And how many checks can they write? As many as you have, whatever many checks are in the book. So they can write as many checks as they want. Does it cost them more to write more checks? No, they buy a checkbook and they can write checks. You get it? He realized, he thought it through. He says, if it was apparent that the boy that age didn't understand the concept of a check, he's doing a check. It's a check. You're right, and you get. You don't know that you have that money in the bank and you take money from someone. Checks are checks. He said the Manal was completely flabbergasted. The great crime that the boy had committed wasn't that at all. In his mind, he didn't hurt anyone and certainly didn't steal from anyone. His entire crime was that he took a check without asking, that he signed without permission. It wasn't like he took a quarter out of a pocketbook that would be stealing. He took a certain paper that would get his school money and win the contest, not understanding the concept behind it. There was no reason that his parents wouldn't give him that paper. And nothing to do with stealing or cheating at all. The entire story changed because Reb Chaim Epstein, I'll conclude it with my interpretation, was a man who exhibited height. He was a very thought-through person, even in his learning and his hashkafa. And when he said it wasn't just fire and brimstone, even though he certainly had a passionate presentation when it was necessary, but he was a man who was calculated, and he had that compassion and the understanding, that midah of height that exhibited the chesed shabahayit. They were able to not only understand the child and teach a very vital lesson to the principal in a moment of his gevurah that quickly transformed it into a moment of absolute height. And this is true about every circumstance in life, whether it's a disagreement between spouse and children, or a storekeeper, whatever it is. You never know. You gotta go slow. You gotta think it through. And when you live that way, you become a person of height. When you become a person of height, you change the world around you. The chesed you could do is one example of so many. Not enough time. We're going to leave it at that, and it's getting late. I thought this was going to be a short